All right, back to Gerald.
I'm gonna stop sharing and see if I can get a better.
Yes, why don't you go to where you would go to create a new item like the one you just showed us? Where do you go to do that?
Okay, well, let me.
In other words, take us to the step that resulted in what you just showed us on the screen. Show us the step before you get this displayed.
Okay, if I go over here and I go up to the top, I can do the new and I can select pages, new page.
Let's do one, and then we'll just stop before we go to the actual creation point, but just go through the steps. Show me.
That's what I'm trying, it's what I'm working on here. Does it come to, okay, this is a new page.
On the shared screen, what I'm seeing is your calendar entry showing this meetup.
Well, that shouldn't.
Okay, well, that's our problem, and I didn't identify that. I thought that's the entry that we're working with, and it was
No,
clearly not what.
no, it's you're showing a different screen. So did you have,
Right.
do you have multiple screens or multiple windows there?
I do have multiple screens, but I was working on the.
You want to make sure that the window that you want to share, the tab in the window that you want to share, make sure that's foremost before you go to the share screen button. Okay, now we've got an edit page.
Okay.
Okay.
I just put it up there.
Okay, so now take us to the page that in question, because that was not what we were viewing.
Okay,
So just do what you originally planned to do. Show us that test page.
okay, yeah, I just wasn't sharing correctly. If I come here. No, that's not what I
Right,
want.
that's why we couldn't. There it is. Okay, so
Except
yeah, and now
I hit-
we'll be able to see the list view.
I hit the wrong button on it. I'm gonna have to go back and let me get the right page up here
Okay, that's the right one.
for the edit.
Okay, so now let's look at list view.
Okay, the top container here is just a heading.
Right, but I think what we have to do is we have to make well, it's okay. So we have a heading there. What's the next container down is the
Next
one with
container down has the columns in it.
right. Okay, so
That's the column that has the picture in it, and that's the column that has the text in it.
okay, why don't we have put in a container with two columns in it? Because what you don't have columns here. What you have is a container with a text block or an image block, right?
Well, yeah, I just.
So in other words, you don't have columns here. What you have is a container, two containers side by side, one container in which there are two columns would be the appropriate way to go. So let's insert above the current container. You go up to the container above. No, yeah, right. The next one down, that one. Yeah, and insert above it. So find the toolbar for it, or yeah, go ahead, insert above that a new container. I think, yeah, no, that's for the image. What you want to do is you're not identifying the container properly. Scroll down a little bit. So the edit window, oh, I'm sorry. You want to show more of the top of the screen. You want to show the start of the container that we're working with. Okay, stop there. All right. So now we're right. So now insert before container. And then you want to put in the 1/3, 2/3 row columns, which is in the second row, first item. Right now, you can into this where your cursor is now. You could add a new image block, or simply copy the one below it, whatever you like.
like the picture.
I gotta move the,
You had it at the bottom left corner, I think, is the picture that you might be looking for. It's the one you used before.
okay,
And now you could just copy and paste the text blocks from the original container, copy and paste them into the new column that you created. Now you're, yeah, okay, good. Just paste them all there. All right, now I would look at the settings for the first column, left column, image block. I mean, I guess it's the container that where do you control the stickiness of the image? Is that from the plugin itself, or is that in the image block?
that is a separate plugin block.
Right,
That
so
is-
there's no option or setting in this image block, right?
No, there is not.
Okay, and this is a core block, or is this a Spectra block?
This is Spectra.
Okay, and you check to see that Spectra doesn't have a sticky block.
I've never seen one in there.
Have you searched for one?
Yes, if I do sticky in here,
No, I think just, generally looking for it is probably a better idea. Let's see what Google has to say. Spectra.
this is the sticky plugin that I'm using, that I've tried. It doesn't have it there, but
Okay, sorry, which block is it?
it's, see the sticky over here?
Yeah. Okay, and so that's,
That's not a Spectra block. That's a separate plugin.
okay. And have you read any instructions for how to use it?
Yes, I've used it before and it's always worked before.
And so what are the steps to use it?
I don't know how to answer that.
Well, how did you use it before successfully?
Well, I wasn't doing it using Spectra at that time, so it may be something dealing with Spectra. I hadn't thought about that.
Well, why don't we just try dragging and dropping sticky below the image block in that column?
That changes everything here.
Okay. Well, let's try. It doesn't look like it inserted that block, does it?
It's inserted it beside it.
Well, no, because that doesn't have a name or anything on it. It doesn't say sticky block here. What happened to it? Did you just delete it?
I just deleted it.
Okay, is there any documentation for this sticky block and the plugin?
Yes. If I go down to the plugins,
Okay, you want to save the page, right? Because this is a good change that we've already made. And all we're trying to figure out now is the stickiness part, right?
I've got a lot of plugins right now that I'm playing with, so. And this is a sticky block that I have.
Okay, it's the settings what we want. Stop. Any block can be added inside the sticky block. Okay, can be added inside other blocks. Okay, so it says the sticky block can be added to the columns block. Good, which is what we have. And it says that you put the image block inside the sticky block.
That is, and I have tried that.
So let's go back and do that.
Okay, let me go back up here to.
All right, so we want to just repeat what we did before, which is list view, right? Container, and then we want to, in the container, you want to insert the sticky block into the container with the image in it. No, I don't think you got the right container there. Go back to the list view.
What do you want me to do? I mean, I'm not,
I don't think you picked the right container. So do the list view. Right, that's the container. Okay, so no, it's the container we're working with. So click the container, and now you want to insert. I guess it's below or above the image block. It doesn't really matter. Just anywhere in the container. All right, now sticky. It's the block.
well, let me,
No, let's go. Let's do sticky down there. Just where it says choose a block. Let's choose sticky. Now you're confusing me. Where do we get this paragraph from? What we want to do is we want to add this sticky block to the container, which already has the image. We don't want to add another container inside the existing container because that's unnecessary.
okay, I'm going to go ahead and just remove that image block out of here and then put the sticky block in.
Sure,
and come
sure,
back in and try
sure,
to add
sure.
that to it, which I've done in the past.
Sure. If that makes it easier, go ahead. And now let's make that the sticky block. And now we want to add the image block, right?
Now I updated here. And then I go to view the page. But it's not sticky, it's still in the middle.
Are there any settings in the sticky block that we can look at?
I'm sorry, Drew, say it again.
Are there any settings in the sticky block that we can actually look at
Well, that's what I was looking for. We didn't find any, but we stopped at the details page for the plugin. So let's go back to the plugins, and there've got to be settings. It'd be hard to believe that anybody would.
Well, I was thinking of it in the block itself, actually, rather than in the plugin.
Yes, that's what I'm referring to. So is this plugin just called? Where are you going, Gerald? We'd like to go back to the plugins page and try to find the settings for the
I was
sticky
thinking
block.
of settings right here, actually. Just to see
Well,
if
the
there's-
only settings are here on the right-hand side under the sticky block area.
All right.
Unfortunately, I'll have to move all my stuff around because it's
You move the block
um,
down a little bit.
okay.
And I've tried that. And I've tried setting this space, at the top.
Now, can you confirm what the name of this is? This sticky block for Gutenberg editor?
I believe that's it. I'm going to update this and then go back to the plugins. Sticky block for Gutenberg editor.
Right now, this is not settings. You understand that, right?
This is not what?
This is just some documentation of the plugin. This is not this. These are not settings, nor do they explain the settings. Well, I guess they do under features, but that's the same as actually written up in the plugin itself. So, well, I guess basically experimentation is about the only way you can close these details. There's no magic answer in there. Other than experimenting with these controls, which I think you've been doing, right?
Yes, I have.
And nothing's worked. And
I
you've
have.
compared it to what you've done before successfully, and there's no difference, right? You haven't seen any difference in the settings here compared to these other occasions.
No, I have not.
And since we're dealing with, a plugin which is intended to be used with Gutenberg blocks, and we're using core blocks, it should work, shouldn't it?
Oh, that's what I thought, and I've been trying for the last week to figure it out.
Right. And so has anybody done anything with support? I see there is a support section here. Have you been through that? Have you asked your question, why is my sticky block not sticking?
I have, and I've not received an answer back yet.
Okay,
Gerald,
which one is yours? Which username are you going by?
The username I'm going by?
Yes, to put in your forum ticket, you need a
No.
username.
Yeah, I'm not going to take everybody's time to do this. I'm just going to wait for them to come back.
Okay, I guess that's really, other than what we just done, we followed all the steps correctly, at least insofar as the page layout is very straightforward. Container, 2 columns, 1/3, 2/3. We did that. And now it's just a question of getting this thing to be sticky. And Jacques, somebody's making a suggestion here. Let's just see what it is.
You're looking at a website.
Just give me a second here. Oh, what is this stuff here? Jacques, I think, I don't know what you're doing here in the chat, but I'm cutting it off because it's not what this is intended to be.
Yeah, I can't get it to go.
Yes, and what you're doing isn't what I don't appreciate you carrying on this thing in the background of chat as opposed to participating with us on the screen stuff. So I'm trying to cut chat off for direct messages. Right. Okay. So Gerald, back to you. Sorry, we can't be of more assistance than getting you to the same point you're at before, but the support group presumably will either have an answer or it will be something that the plugin developer doesn't care to deal with in some fashion.
Okay.
But I think there's this sticky question is quite a common one in that it's a technique that lots of people want to use. And so I'm surprised that Astra doesn't offer anything specifically to deal with how to do stickiness, but you searched and not found anything, and spectral blocks are quite good, the rule.
Gerald, you mentioned that you did have this successfully working once before.
On another website.
Okay, and it used, I guess, a different theme, and perhaps, or did it use it? So what was different about that website?
I use Astra on all my sites, so I don't have anything that's different than that.
Were you also using Spectra on the other site as well? In the Spectra blocks?
I believe so. I can't remember every fine detail until I get in there to see it.
So that'll be an interesting thing, is just to go over all the details of what the difference is between the site that works and the site that doesn't work. That's generally my troubleshooting process for something like this.
Okay.
Is just to go through it detail by detail and say, you know, okay, one works, one doesn't. What's the difference?
I understand that, and I will spend my time on that after this meetup and tomorrow.
Yes, you might check the Kadence blocks and see if they offer anything, because I do vaguely recall there being a sticky block or a sticky capability, let's put it that way. But I don't recall whether that's the pro version or the free version. But that's definitely worth looking into, because their stuff does work generally as it's advertised.
Okay, appreciate the information and feedback.
Great, let us know how you make out. Thanks.
Okay,
Now, who is the other fellow? Brett, but is Brett still here? Brett had to go at 7, I think he said. Brett, are you around still? I see Nicole has just put in the chat, Gerald, that Kadence blocks have a free sticky block. If you're muted right now, Gerald.
okay, I've got the Kadence block, so I'll go out and look at those.
Right. Okay, well, that's cool. Right. Okay, so Brett, is Brett around? Okay, he said that he can
Like
only
he
stay till
isn't.
7, and
He said he
posted
was
it.
going at 7.
Yeah, so he looks like he's gone. All right, who'd like to be next?
Shubham Garg had a question.
I'm sorry, which name?
Perhaps he would be next.
What was the name? Jack, what was the name of the person?
Hi, it's Shubham Garg.
Oh, I think he was talking about me. GA?
Well, if
I
you
don't
just
know, I
speak
just
up,
heard
I'm
my
just trying to
name.
identify who's who, and so we don't have two people trying to go at once. So who was the second person who just spoke up?
Gina Artuso. I put in a question about formatting.
Okay, Jack, was that the person you're referring to or someone else? Well, let's go with Gina, and whoever was next can be after Gina. How's that sound?
Works for me.
Yeah,
Do you want me to put my camera on?
I'm sorry, who is that? Jack? Is he trying to say something there, Jack
No.
or Drew? Okay, yes, Gina, please share your screen.
I can share my screen. Do you want me to put my camera on?
Yes.
Okay, I lose the screen if I do that, so. 1 second here.
Mike Mattos raised his hand. Mike, have you got something that we can answer just in 30 seconds or less before we go back to
Well, you can certainly think about it. Is there any way that I can persuade WordPress to give me a report on all of my pages to tell me what is being used and what's being called and what files are being called by my pages? Because right now it feels like I have to walk my way through 100 pages to see if changing a picture is going to affect anything. You know, like where's that picture being used, and how's the quick way to find out if that picture is on 1 page or 100 pages? You know,
Okay,
how do I get a report?
Right. Okay, let's go back to Gina, and then Mike, you'll be up after Gina.
Okay.
Don't let us forget. Gina.
Yeah, I'm going to share my screen. And first off, I'd like to thank the organizers of this meetup. This is my second one here. I'm very new to WordPress, and I'm responsible for updating websites. And I've had little to no training. what my formatting year issue is you can see my screen. You see this Word document and it's all.
We're not seeing your
formatted
screen.
properly.
We're not seeing your screen yet.
Oh, you're not? Okay.
Not yet.
It's showing that it's highlighted.
So once you selected the screen you want on the desktop, then you double click on that screen and then that becomes the one that's shared. And it says starting screen sharing, and now we have normal
Oh.
farm practices protection board.
That is correct.
Okay,
Okay, so this is a Word document that is all formatted.
Yep.
With links that go into my site. I'm gonna have to flip this over because we've only got one screen now. And when I go to put it into my site,
so what are you doing right now?
I'm showing you the site.
Right, but are you creating a page? Are you looking for an existing page?
Yeah, I'm looking for an existing page.
And what page is that?
It's supposed to be on this here. This might be it. When I go to paste it, like I copy and paste it, and I only have two options. One is just a strict paste, and one is I don't know what the other one's called.
Well, you know you're using the classic editor here, right?
This is all I have. Is that the
Right,
issue?
but the classic editor and Word aren't the best of friends. You know that, correct?
Right, but I just started in this job not long ago,
Right,
and last year didn't seem to have any issues.
okay, so what are your issues with this particular conversion process that we're just,
I'm not even on the right page here. So from the Word document, what's happening is this formatting doesn't carry over. The
Right.
A, B, C, D, E all changes to 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's none of it's indented and none of it is linked. And
right,
so
so
I
it
went-
loses its, the formatting of the internal lists and the links are lost from the labels left, but the link itself is gone. Is that correct?
That's what I'm having an issue with, but I guess whoever did it last year didn't have that issue.
Can you show us what they did last year, what they produced last year, so we can compare it?
Yeah, I can. You know what? I'm on the wrong frickin' site.
They made a lot of improvements in the conversion process for both Word and Google Docs into WordPress pages and posts with the transition into Gutenberg. The problem with WordPress, with Word and the classic editor began with all kinds, some junk being added in the process of conversion, things like extra breaks and non-printing characters that change the layout. And they pretty much addressed all those with the transition to Gutenberg.
So you're saying we should upgrade?
Well, what version of WordPress are you currently using?
I don't know. I think it's 6.1 or something like that.
Right. So you've done something to turn on the classic editor, presumably by using the classic editor plugin, which if you'd simply switch to using the regular block editor rather than the classic editor, then you could see what the conversion process looks like and whether you prefer it to the way the classic editor does the conversion.
Okay,
I think that you'll find it's preferable.
Yeah, that doesn't mean much to me because, like I said, I'm really new at this.
Yes, but what I'm
Okay.
explaining to you though is that the classic editor, the current editor you're using, which you've chosen to use because it's not the default editor. The default editor is the block editor. So somebody's added a plugin which has enabled the classic editor to be used. That's why we're seeing what we're seeing here. If
Okay,
you didn't use the classic editor, but just created an ordinary page
how
on the
do I do
site and
that?
then use the block editor instead to edit it, then you could find out whether the Word document converted more faithfully using the block editor rather than the classic editor. These are important distinctions which you need to learn about, especially if you're using Word documents regularly. By the way,
We
a
are,
table of contents Word document is amongst the more complex Word documents and often has internal problems. And so when converted, it confounds the conversion process in ways that are hard to sort out. So the more
Okay.
complex the Word document, the more complex the conversion, the more likely errors and problems will arise.
right, okay, so
So
the,
normally what you do is you would test your way in by taking very ordinary, straightforward Word contents of a document, paragraphs, simple lists, a few headings, and seeing that that converts faithfully, accurately. In other words, headings are made into headings, lists are preserved as lists, numbering works, that sort of thing. And then you work up to more complex layouts of the Word document. But
and how do I do that?
well, that's it's not a simple thing to do, because your table of contents document in Word is presumably using a template.
It
Since
is.
basically all Word documents are templated. So the issue may lie in the template used to create the table of contents. Was the table of contents manually created or generated?
It's from this document.
Right, but was in Word, you can programmatically generate a table of contents and get an automatic result. You can also
Oh,
just
I see what
create
you're
a bunch of
saying.
lists and call that a table of
And
contents.
unfortunately, I don't know that answer because I didn't create it.
Well, I would find that out as a first priority. Where
Okay,
did
so
this
this-
table of contents come from, please? Who authored it? What version of Word was used? What template was used?
Okay, so this was last done in 2009. And this one here, it actually works, right? Like when you, in the
Yeah.
visual thing, when you actually click them on in the website, it works. So then when I just copied and pasted my new version, that is 2023, into sorry, I can't see my other screen here. When I copy and pasted it into here, none of the formatting worked. So I went in and I clicked in, did all the links for it, but I can't seem to get these indented. Like no matter what I do.
Well, I guess the first thing you have to decide, or at least that I would recommend you decide between using the classic editor, which is what you're currently using, which is obsolete now and replaced by a new editor called the block editor.
Okay,
The
do I
block
have,
editor is an improved editor in handling Word documents and Google Docs documents.
yeah, I did.
And
try
so the
to
question is,
purchase-
do you want to spend the time to learn how to use the classic editor, given that these are the circumstances of its use? Right now, for instance, you're playing with it, right? I mean, to what end, I don't know. I mean, it seems to be much easier to switch or much better to switch to the block editor and solve your Word layout problems there, because a year from now, that's what you'll be using, not the classic editor.
Okay, so how do I get that block editor?
Well, okay, I've told you now 3 times. I don't mean to be repetitious, but you will have a plugin installed on your site that's called the classic editor plugin. Somebody help me out here. What exactly is the
Robin,
name?
just
Drew?
before we get into that, in the old classic, in the classic editor, was there not a paste from Word function?
Well, let's find out. I mean,
Yeah,
it's been
I
so long
thought
since I
there
used the
was,
classic editor with
yeah.
Word. I can't remember.
I'm gonna see if I can find one on my an old site that's still using the
Um,
classic editor.
So let's
So
see.
I did some research on here, and a lot of it showed that in the sidebar on the right side, there was a headings tab, and this site does not have that. So what I had to do is go into the text area and actually put all my coding in there. Like I had to go into this text version, and I had to, why am I not on text? There. So I had to put all this coding in here. ID equals what have you to get the links to work.
Right, which is to say, you've abandoned the conversion process and you're now manually converting the document.
Okay, so I'll look into
Wait a
seeing
second,
what it
but I
takes
mean,
to
that's
get that.
important for you to recognize that creating the document manually as opposed to having it converted for you by the editor is a pretty big difference. So don't just casually, I mean, I would recommend, don't just casually start to manually
I
edit the Word
spent
document.
hours on here, and I still have a French version to do. So
Right, but that's
anything
why
that
I'm
can make my
saying, I
life
think it's
easier.
worth investing enough time to learn the difference between the classic and the block editors
Okay,
and how one is, someone's decided, let's use the classic editor, not the block editor on this site. And now you're going to evaluate whether that's a sound decision or not, because
okay,
if nothing
understood.
else, I'm recommending that that's an important thing for you to do.
Understood. I don't want to monopolize the time either. I just have one other question.
Gina, just
So
before
any
we
of the
leave this,
ones that,
just before we leave this issue, one other option you might consider is saving the Word document as a PDF.
I did try that,
and then
and I tried a
displaying.
Google document, and it's just not working.
Really?
Why, Drew, are you suggesting that as a way to convert?
No, but actually to leave it as a PDF and display.
Right, but that's like
Yeah.
I think that's just not a sound solution, in that Word documents and
Uh-huh.
Google Docs are intended and expected to be converted smoothly and easily into pages and posts in WordPress. And they've spent a fair amount of time and effort and some real degree of success, according to all the, I mean, I'm right in the middle of a major chunk involving conversion of Google Docs. And it's clear that there's the old way, classic editor, the new way, block editor. Learning the old way is crazy because it's not only less effective, but it's also obsolete. The other thing is that one of the benefits of using Word is that you can automatically generate tables of contents from documentation without touching the page itself that's created. In other words, the page is created by Word itself by going through all the pages that you point it to and gathering the table of contents information from those documents and then producing the file. Given that capability, which I think has probably been used here, you don't want to lose that capability by manually trying to do this conversion, because then what's the point of automatically generating the Word document if you then just manually handle it? It'll certainly discourage you from updating pages. There's a lot of manual work involved. There's lots of material on converting Word documents, let's put it that way. Word's more popular than Google Docs, but they're quite similar in many respects. Anything else, Gina?
Yes, my only other question is, so when I put these manual links in here, all of them work except for the ones that have more than one word.
More than one word.
So like here, written and electronic hearings, this link does not work.
Now, are you saying that the link has spaces in it?
It does, and
Okay,
I
spaces
Googled it.
are
and-
spaces, when they exist in a URL, are an error. They should be replaced by %20. And when you've done that, the link will work.
Sorry, what was that?
When you have a URL which has spaces in the slug, say, the file name part of it, then the normal process of the editor is to treat the space, fill the space with a $20, three characters, $20. And that is seen by HTML as meaning a space. In other
Okay,
words, you
so-
can't have spaces, so spaces are automatically filled in that fashion. And if you try to use a URL that has spaces, just insert what I just told you for each space,
Percentage and 2
and then you're
zeros.
off to the races.
Okay, so my research said to put in dashes, so that's incorrect? Like if you
Well,
look
as
at this
long
one here-
well, what you're trying to do is match this URL to the file that it's pointing to, right? That file,
Right.
what is, does it use spaces or does it use dashes or what?
It uses spaces.
Okay, well, then you have to change the file to dashes as well as the URL. The URL is supposed to represent what the file name is.
Oh, okay, so if
So
I
if there
go
are spaces in
back-
the file, then it's %20. If there are
Um,
dashes in the file, then it should be dashes in the URL.
Except
Okay,
that.
so if I look
Sorry,
at
sorry.
this one
Go ahead,
here,
hang on, Drew, what?
Yeah, this is a special case because the table of contents is using anchors. So there's no file. It's all one file. And so this is after the file name in the URL. It's a hashtag.
Yeah, but I
and an
think
anchor
is it not the same situation with
Mhm.
anchors as it is with the file name itself?
No, anchors are handled differently because
these are anchors.
you never actually see the anchors. The end user doesn't see the anchors. So Gina is free to use dashes if she wants to. It'll display on the it'll display on the
It's not amazing,
URL
and the literally millions of uses I've made of links. I didn't know, and I will check, but so you're saying that the anchor string can have any character separator, spaces, no spaces,
anything except
%20,
spaces.
dashes or underscores, regardless of what the file actually has.
Yeah, and the file name doesn't matter here. It's the only one you can't use is a space. You can use %20, you can use underscore, you can use dash.
Okay,
Okay,
any
I thought you
idea
just
why
said
it's not working
that
though?
an anchor, it didn't matter, you could use anything you like,
Nope.
or nothing.
Anything except a space.
I think
Okay,
that's
so
where I
any
started out.
idea why it's not working?
So wait a sec, Drew. So Drew, you're saying that if the anchor string has underscores, then
Yep.
it will work with dashes in the URL.
If the anchor string will appear in the URL automatically.
Wait a second. You're manually creating a URL with an anchor.
Nope.
You're looking at the page,
You're
and the
manually
page has spaces in the anchor string.
other way around. You're creating the URL from the anchor.
No, but I'm saying, if you just wouldn't mind following me along, I'm trying to confirm or figure out something. We don't need to worry about the file name, right? Because that's taken care of. We're dealing with on-page anchors, so the
Mhm.
file names are relevant. So if the anchors have spaces in them, I understand you saying, well, it doesn't matter what you use. You can use underscore, dashes, or %20, or a space to represent the space.
Nope. Anchors cannot have spaces. Period.
Right. I think that's what I started out saying. Isn't that the case?
No, you said they couldn't have dashes.
No, anyway, I did start out saying you can't have a space in a URL, and that includes the anchor text.
Mhm.
And if you do in the normal editing process, the editor puts in the percentage 20 when it comes across a space so that it gives you a valid URL to work with. You can have a dash or an underscore in the anchor, but the point is that the URL or the anchor in the URL has to correspond to the file, and the part in the file where the anchor lies are what governs the URL itself. So can we go back to, so Gina, does that make sense? Does that resolve the issue that you had?
Well, no, because if you see here, I've got the dashes in, but it doesn't work.
Right, but in the document itself, sorry, in the document that we're looking at, where we find the ID's value, does that
Here.
value, no, this is targeting it. Where does it actually go? Where in the document does that anchor lie? And what we want to find out is, it have spaces, underscores, or what?
Well, that's what I manually put in. Like I manually did all
But the
that.
document that you got to work with, what did it have to begin with? Because that's what isn't working, correct?
Yes. The
Okay, so let's just
document
find
does
one, find the one that you were just pointing out, and we'll see, are the spaces, dashes, or underscores used? That's what we're trying to figure out. Looks like they all use spaces. Right.
in this part here.
It looks like all the ID values have spaces in them. Anything with that hash sign preceding it is an ID value.
Okay, so here's where I have to take the spaces out.
Well, so Drew, I've never used spaces in anchors. Can you use a space in an anchor?
Nope.
Okay, so yes. Well, I guess first of all, back up one step. Who created all those pages with these links that aren't valid?
Somebody higher up than myself.
Right. Okay. Like, could somebody just, are you absolutely dead positive? Because we're going to make a lot of work for somebody, Drew, if you're wrong. I personally have never used spaces in any form of file name or URL across all operating systems, across all decades of my work. So the idea of having a space in an anchor string doesn't.
No, you can't.
Never occurred to me.
No, you can't have spaces in anchors.
But I would not, Gina, make changes now without knowing what exactly you're doing, what strategy you're following. So
Yeah, I agree. I agree. It's going to be a lot of work one way or another. But
okay, but let's find out whether or not.
I'll look into that block editor, and I really appreciate everybody's help on this. And I'll let you answer some other questions.
Yeah, I did.
Right.
Also...
So let just before we finish here, let's just see what Google has to say. Can an anchor string have a space?
That's where I found out to put the dashes in. I Googled it.
The name of an anchor can be any text you care to use. However, it should not have spaces in the name. Use a hyphen, underscore, blah, blah, blah. So I guess, I mean, Gina, I would want to make sure to understand how it came about that all these links are ineffective with their spaces, right?
Right.
Because if that's true throughout your entire site, then you have a nightmare in the making, and you should probably go about it more systematically than manually making changes as you're thinking now. You could, for example, have someone develop a script which would go through pages and posts, find all anchors, and systematically change them. Personally, I prefer underscores. Google prefers dashes. Lots of people prefer dashes. Some people prefer underscores. Nobody likes percentage sign 20. The reason I prefer underscores is that I find them easier and faster to read than dashes. However, Google, in its infinite wisdom, blessed the use of dashes, and so a whole generation of people have existed thinking that's somehow better.
You know what? I think you just fixed my problem here, because anything that had more than one word on it wasn't working in my links, and this just worked. And when we go back, I changed that one to put dashes in between, like on the hashtag one.
Right.
So I put dashes in between here, enlarging or abiding time. And I'm pretty sure that just fixed the issue.
Well, you know, there is a tool which is designed specifically to find strings of text and replace them with other strings of text for just this sort of problem, where it'll take your long list of 50 or 2,000 or 10,000 anchor texts and systematically, accurately change them all to whatever it is you choose, spaces into underscores, spaces into dashes, whatever, right?
Are you talking like code? Because
Well, yeah, there are different ways. There's like at least 10 different ways to use these techniques. I use a Windows program called X-Replace, which is an ancient free program, which works really nicely. And the magic that it does is something called regular expressions. That's the magic term to Google. So when you have a bunch of URLs or HTML and you want to systematically change something throughout many instances, then regular expressions is the magic that developers use. And they have all kinds of little programs to help non-coders get the benefit of it. So in X-Replace, you just specify where to look, and you say, look for these characters and replace them with those characters. And it'll go through literally 1,000 items in 2 or 3 seconds.
The problem is that to generate the regular expression that will go through the document and only do the anchor text in the table of contents will be a fairly complex regular expression. Otherwise, it'll go through all of the regular text and replace all the spaces there too.
No, I think you just simply specify that it can the string must follow the hash character, and then terminate with whatever the closing element or aspect of that HTML element is. Actually, I mean, Perl does this brilliantly to specify the context of the changes with extreme precision.
It is, however,
however, these are not the simplest of things to use, and so therefore there are sites which enable you to sort of specify your problem and then try out different solutions on demo text, and then find one that works before you actually do anything with it. It may be something you want to consult somebody.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Developer background, because your problem is more than just let's spend 10 or 20 hours. Your problem is an ongoing one. There's an architectural issue with the way the site works that you can manually work with, but you really need to have a strategy to resolve it, and then a decision to follow a certain way and procedure of doing things, so that in the future this sort of thing will not continue to be a problem.
I agree.
Hopefully that is a bit of guidance.
But I think I've got a lot of answers here today, and I thank you for them. And
by the way, you'll be able to check the recording at approximately this time if you wanted to review what it was we discussed, and there'll be the notes that come in the transcript, which I forgot to turn on. But you know what?
I think the transcript is turned on, actually.
Did I actually turn it on? Yes, no, sorry, maybe I did.
excellent.
It's actually listed as a user.
Okay, I can't remember exactly what I did, but I also have been trying out this an alternative to Zoom called Grain, spelled just the way Canadians know what grain is, and it does a better job of transcripts to my way of thinking. So what I could do is run this session through the Grain procedure to get its transcript, and then I'll publish that link as well. Anyway,
That's excellent. Thank you so much.
It's a YouTube video, and it can be helpful going over something that wasn't clear, or that we sort of got a little contentious about, and maybe spoke quickly about it. And
I've watched a lot of YouTubes on this.
YouTube's really good.
And yeah, no, you guys are way better.
Okay, Lori raised his or her hand. Lori, are you there?
Hi, yes, I am.
Okay, Gina, we're done with you.
Yes,
Thanks.
thank you.
The
Gloria,
reason I raised my hand is I just tried an experiment to help Gina, and it was way back for her first question about losing the table of contents links.
Yep.
Right. So, and taking into account what you said, Robin, about the block editor versus the classic editor.
Yep.
So I created a Word document, and I just put an assortment of types in their styles, right? So I had a title, formatted
Yep.
as title, heading, body, all that stuff. And I had a list. And then I inserted a table of contents at the top, which you can delete the ones you have in your Word document and recreate it, right?
Right.
So you don't have to feel like it's an artifact you have to preserve forever. But anyway,
Because what's happening is that headings, for example, have a bit of hidden metadata in them, and the Word program goes through all of the text of its file and picks off the headings and other items which would go into the table of contents,
right,
and can keep track of the heading numbers and so on to figure out the indentation, and that's how it produces its table of contents.
Yes. Yeah. So like you said, it's very, very helpful, right? But anyway, I just did that. So it was all formatted in those styles, and then I just manually highlighted and copied it. And then I started a new page on my WordPress site, and I flipped to that, and I just literally pasted it all into one block. I didn't even.
So actually, you didn't convert the document.
Title.
You pasted the text, which got converted in the process.
Just like that. And when
because I think up-to-date WordPress is a lot of, well, it's XML under the hood, but it's very HTML oriented. And so what I used to do was I created Word templates which used all HTML labels like heading 1, 2, 3, 4. Lists were inline, or UL or OL, and so on and so forth. And that made my conversions to HTML relatively straightforward, because my style sheet matched up with the HTML style sheet for the names of classes. And so, but that's no longer necessary. And by the way, just to mention it, if you're having trouble with Word documents, there is a program called HTML Tidy, T-I-D-Y, which will go through a document and extract all the inline styles and put them into an external style sheet for you, which makes then using Word much easier.
I'm going to try that. Hang on, I got to write that down. But anyway, I saved the file, or saved the page, and then I previewed it, right? And it worked when I clicked the link in the table of contents.
Excellent, excellent. So Gina, try that simple technique of just fix one set of URLs to try out, and instead of converting the document, just copy and paste into the block editor, into a paragraph block within the block editor.
Yep.
In fact, you don't even have to specify paragraph.
And I wasn't even familiar with that until Gerald had his question with the paragraphs and the columns and everything. So I've learned a few things today. Thank you very much.
Yeah, me too. And,
the other thing is that most of these things about conversions you never get into until you actually have a problem to solve. I mean, why learn it sort of in the abstract? So I have a project in which I've got somewhere around 60 pages of heavy text, like minimum 500 words, more like 2,500 words, and converting them all in a batch, as well as providing metadata, so that the conversion process is controlled by a spreadsheet or a service, and it's all done in one batch operation, is what my goal is. And to do that, I depend upon an accurate conversion, because I don't want to go through any of those pages to check them, right? I mean, that's just too boring and painful to think about. One of the issues is converting images, because you've got to get the image out of the Google Doc or the Word document into the media library somehow. And there are some plugins which support that process. And so if that is an issue, Gina, if you have Word documents with images, then there's another wrinkle to sort of work your way through. But it is a common sort of issue, and if it's not solved already, it might be solved tomorrow or next week for all we know.
Yeah, I thank you very much for everybody's input for sure.
And Gina, one last thing, maybe it's GoDaddy specific, but my WordPress site is on GoDaddy. And I'm able to, like, I can edit a page. And when I'm in that editor interface, over on the right, I can switch back and forth with ease while I'm in edit mode from the classic editor to the block editor, which you can think of the block editor as like the rich text view, maybe in Word, right? It's similar to that. So
Okay.
you don't have to worry. But I would say use a staging site just in case I'm wrong. Like maybe there's some quirk to your site, right? So maybe you
Yeah,
want to,
I've only been doing this like a couple months, so it's a lot to learn for sure.
yeah. Because if you upgrade to that, I don't think you can downgrade once you install the block editor.
Yeah,
Like I say, mine works. The old one's still there. It's just I don't think you can get rid of the block editor once it's there. And if it messed your site up, that wouldn't
No,
be
I
good.
think, I mean, the block editor is part of core now. So if
Yeah.
you're up to date with WordPress, you have the block editor, whether you want it or not.
Okay.
From the beginning with Gutenberg, you had the option of using the classic editor plugin, which made the classic editor available. And it can be turned on or off as you like. And when you've used it to create a page or a post, you can then stop using it, deactivate that plugin, and deal with it in the block editor. There's nothing that the classic editor can do that the block editor can't follow through and amend, extend, or do whatever. Well, it would have to, right? Because how could you have something on a WordPress site that the block editor can't edit? Wouldn't make any sense, right? Because there's so much inherited copy from existing websites. You know, how many millions of websites have had classic editor text created over the last 20 years? That's a lot. So the block editor has to be really good at that. Now, what the block editor won't do is that there are a lot of extensions of the classic editor that have evolved over the years for specialized requirements, right? Plugins that you use for the classic editor that will add capabilities to that editor. Well, those capabilities aren't going to be replicated yet on the site on the block editor because it simply hasn't been around long enough. So you need to know enough about your classic editor to know if there's any special circumstances about its use that you might need to preserve. Most people won't be aware of that. Most people just have the classic editor vanilla version. And therefore turning it off after a period of use should not be any issue at all. In fact, you know, there've been lots of demos in the early days of just switching back and forth mindlessly and showing that everything works fine. So in the block editor, you have the same visual versus text view or code view as you do in the block editor and the classic editor both have a visual or a rich text view, and they have a code or HTML or plain text view. And they both have those tabs in the same places. So there's no difference in that respect either. Okay, Drew, anything to add?
I don't think so.
I think someone just, oh, maybe that was a thumb up saying good or yes or whatever. Mike Mattos says there's a plugin that allows a Word doc to be embedded. Yeah, I mean, using a PDF or embedding a Word document, or I mean, there's many alternatives. You can use an iframe, for example, for a PDF file or a Word document. But I think the whole point of the exercise is to get out of the Word document into the HTML and then maintain it in HTML, not be going back to using Word because there's no advantage in that. Gina, there does happen to be a number of plugins specifically for generating tables of contents from posts and pages, right? So in other words, they do what the Word program does for itself, but they'll do it for a site. They'll say, okay, point me at 50 or 100 to 200 pages and I'll produce a table of contents for them. And you can decide on all the same things that Word does, like how many levels of indentation and how do I want it laid out and so on. And that would solve your problem because it would collect the URLs from the pages themselves. And then in a sense, create it from scratch originally. Now, there are Gutenberg block tables of contents plugins. which are quite popular and used quite extensively. And they have some capabilities which Word documents don't, like making the table of contents sticky in a right sidebar or left sidebar.
One possible issue with that is that these appear to be legal documents, and they might contain internal references to, the paragraph might say, for further information, see paragraph 4.9.1 or something like that. And if you've used another table of contents generation, the paragraph numbering could change.
But I think once you've converted the bulk of the Word content into pages, right, it makes sense then to complete the conversion and then work in those pages rather than trying to maintain a Word version independently of the site and then constantly converting it and dealing with the issues that you just raised now. But Gina, I mean, you know from your own material, is there internal coding? Is there metadata added to individual paragraphs that has to be preserved somehow for technical reasons of one sort or another? Because that obviously changes what your options are if you have to preserve that. But I didn't see any in what you were doing. And yeah, so I mean, the strategy when I was mentioning was really a view of this, of the way your site is to be managed that takes into account these various issues on an ongoing basis and recognizes that, solving your problem today with just these updates doesn't address the larger context of, how are Word documents being used, and is eventually that all going to be converted over to an HTML process in a content management system or what? So you kind of have your work cut out for you.
Yes, thank
Who's
you very
next?
much.
Anybody next volunteering?
I'd like to ask a question, if I may. My name's Stephen.
Oh, sorry, just 1 second. Mike, you didn't protect your place in line there? I mean,
I'm hopefully I'm still in the line. I thought you were managing.
no, can we go through with Mike next and then come back to you? Is it, sorry, Steve or is Mr.
Stephen.
Steven, we'll come
Sure,
back to you.
of course, sure.
Jump in after Mike so that, hey, I'm next, or do something to make
Of
sure I
course,
don't
sure.
miss you.
Okay.
Okay, Mike, fire away.
I'm maintaining a site that's probably 20 years old, and I've never seen most of the pages. I don't know anybody alive ever seen most of the pages, but I would like to know what's on the pages that are no longer on the menu system. And I don't know of a way to be able to just create a report that tells me what all of these pages contain, what pictures they call, what they're doing. I've worked in other content management systems where you just, call for a report and it will tell you everything you ever wanted to know. But I've been reduced to actually dumping from the SQL to get a list of links and then putting the links in a spreadsheet and then clicking on each link and writing notes beside it on my spreadsheet, which is a couple hundred lines long, but at least it puts my notes on one document beside the link to the page, which is not, as I said, not on a menu system. But I'm thinking there must be a better way to find stuff in your history. Because typically what's happening is we're looking for a picture of, the mayor shaking hands with somebody, 12 years ago. All right. And so I'm searching for the name of that particular mayor and which pages have the name of that mayor, and then I can probably find the picture.
Yeah, just at first blush, I think the way to go about this sort of thing is to recognize that there are sort of different aspects of the problem. So, for example, let's start off at the beginning. I'm not aware of a tool or service which would provide a comprehensive view of the content of a site that would list all pages and posts, itemize their metadata, list images that may be used and their file names and so on. But I do know that there are all kinds of individual tools, like, for example, this question of what to do with images. There are, at least in my experience, no free plugins which will give you a listing of images by page or post. Not, that is to say, a listing of pages, and if they have an image, what image they have, or a listing of images and which page you'll find them on. But of course, you're limited to things like captions, right? If your caption of your person shaking a hand with the mayor 12 years ago is, hot dog day, well, then you'll never find that image, right? So finding images is fairly difficult to do unless the captions are well put together or there's quality metadata that tells you its topic or subject or whatever. But simply finding out which image goes with which page or post and vice versa, there are, I can't think of the name of a plugin off the top of my head, but I know there are paid plugins that do these sorts of things as part of media library management, right? Now, as far as the contents of pages, I guess as from a developer point of view, you could write a script which would output from the database a nice report that would list everything that you might want to know, right? Because the information is in the database, it's getting it out and then formatting, right?
Yeah, well, that's basically how I loaded my spreadsheet.
Right,
With a
but
SQL query.
you'd like to have everything relevant. That would be the name, the slug, the metadata, the images, the template. I mean, basically all the data pertinent to a given post or page, you might as well have available because with that resulting database, you can then search and sort and organize information to find out what you want. But I'm not sure whether there's a plugin that will do this for you automatically. But I mean, it would be a diagnostic or a site maintenance tool. I mean, I know there are database services that enable all kinds of things to be done with the database data itself in WordPress, like get that data out and do things with it. But I've not dealt with this kind of a specific problem. Does anybody have any experience or suggestions to make? Drew, any thoughts?
Well, yeah, if you know specifically what you're looking for, and if you're looking for a specific picture or a picture of a specific person, what you can do is a Google search restricted to your own site and let Google do the heavy lifting for you.
This is when you want to search for an image by its topic.
You mean with Google facial recognition, you mean?
No, you don't even need to use you just use a text search.
Yes, I think what Drew's saying is that Google's pretty good at recognizing the subject matter in an image. And so therefore, in the example we're talking about of the mayor shaking hands with somebody 12 years ago, Drew's saying that search using Google in a search limited to your site's content only. Then use Google's pattern recognition to find all things involving this person or a man shaking hands or whatever it is you want to describe the thing as. But that's pretty much a one image at a time sort of thing, right? Now it may be that with our AI tools that are now available, having a chat bot go through a database and list all the images and then provide 5 to 10 words of descriptive text about the subject matter of those images, you might be surprised at the quality of the result. I mean, if they can produce, if ChatGPT, AI processes can produce images based on descriptions, give me a sea coast with rain in the sunset, southern hemisphere, winter months, whatever. And then it produces 10 images like that. Well, then if you were to provide a copy of the website database just for the use of this ChatGPT process, and then say, go through all these images, list them, and give me these descriptions, I mean, that could well work. I mean, you'd be surprised at how effective these things are. I mean, I've asked questions. There's one, I think it's called perpetuity.ai, which is a AI-powered search engine. And sometimes I just give it a question, which I was going to work out myself. And I'm surprised at how good the answer is in some cases. So let's think other things. Actually, most of the database maintenance plugins, certainly the paid ones, offer management tools which let you sort of view from a top-down point of view what your site consists of. So those are something to consider as well. But I think in the short answer to the whole exercise is that you've got to get the basic information out of the database in a fashion which captures all the metadata available in one exercise. I mean, why go back for more? Just take it all. It's not that much. It's only 40 fields or something at most. If you take an individual HTTP transaction, there's like, I don't know, 3 or 4 times that many properties which are documented. So these are things which are considered light loads from a processing point of view. Anybody else have any suggestions or things to propose or offer? Okay.
Well, good discussion anyway. If I find something, I'll come back with it.
That'd be great. You should be able to. There are lots of different ways to do this. And as I say, you might consider, for example, those freelancer, marketplaces like Fiverr, right?
Yeah.
Where you can say, I've got $50. I need somebody to write a script, which will take, my database and give me a report spreadsheet with these values in it. Who wants it? And see who goes for it.
I think I'm skilled enough that by the time I do the algorithm, I can probably write the
by the time you've written instructions, you've done 90% of the work.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So, but okay, I will go back to my project anyway and see what else I can find on the tables.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, well, by the way, EXIF data, right? I found out you can actually write a whole slideshow just using EXIF data with some slideshow viewers, and you can embed the photographer, the date, the location, and the caption right in the picture.
Wow.
And you just pop in the pictures and there's your show with all this information formatted in HTML. There's amazing amount of data that's embedded in those pictures that people don't know is there. So I wouldn't be at all surprised if I go digging, I'm going to find some stuff associated with those pictures that I really am not that's just accidentally there.
True. And you have those tools that let you read that data or change the data for that matter.
Yeah.
Which aren't as common on the Mac side of the brain as the Windows side, but that's certainly one way. I labored for ages trying to find a cheap or a free tool on the Mac world side of the brain that just would let me change a file's create date to an arbitrary date of my choice. It's much harder than you think.
A file?
A file's date. A text file.
Generic file, not
an HTML file, an image file, whatever. Yeah, just a file in the system.
That can be done.
Well, no, it can't be done actually.
Well, it can if you change the CMOS state and do some copying.
Well, yeah, but I mean, we're talking about using the Finder or Explorer equivalent and just clicking on something and changing the date. Not having to go through, fire up a terminal and use a command line or whatever to do something.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. You pick up a new computer and you find out millions and millions of files that are dated 1900.0101.
Yeah.
Because that was the BIOS default date when you loaded the computer. Nobody had set the date. Nobody had gone into the calendar before they loaded the computer. Therefore, that was the date. And
Right.
That's how I learned that you could accidentally set the date on files to the wrong date by using the calendar in CMOS.
Interesting. Okay, who's up next?
So I had a
Stephen.
question.
Oh, yes, Mike. Where's Mike? Oh, no, we got Mike. What was Stephen, right?
Yes, that's correct. Yes. So the last time I used WordPress was 2018, and now I've been tasked to look over our company's website, which actually consists of 3 websites and soon to be a 4th one. What happened a couple of months ago, I think some of the plugins either went out of date, so their subscriptions lapsed. And I also noticed that there is not a update of the general WordPress version. I can show you the page right now, and you'll probably be able to tell what's happened. So my question is, the next step, I think, would be to choose a staging tool to be able to recreate the site or duplicate it, and then to turn on all the things and see if they work, pay the appropriate subscriptions, and of course, update the version. So I just want to know if you concur with that or you have some other suggestion. So here, have a look at this. I presume I can share with you,
Yeah,
right?
go ahead.
Okay, let me open that page and I'll share it with you. So this is the site. Are you able to see it now?
Yep, yep,
Okay, is it large enough for you?
yep.
Okay, so I guess you can tell that it's asking for an update. I've
Right, but
clicked-
what version are we currently on?
I have no idea. Where would I find that?
Well, several places, but we don't need to go there quite yet. Hang on.
Sure, fine. So
Okay,
it's-
let's scroll down to in the left menu sidebar.
yes,
Guys, where is health settings? Is that under tools? I can't remember. Tools, let's try tools or settings, one of those two.
tools,
Site
health,
health, yeah, the 4th item.
site health.
Yeah.
Okay,
And that'll tell us,
very well.
okay, so PHP requires an update and then
Yes.
scroll a bit and okay, and update available. So under the recommended improvements, click the first one there for performance,
The box or just the down arrow?
just to see where we
Okay,
sell the latest version. Doesn't say what current version is. It'll be back on the first page, but anyway, that's not a big deal. Okay, so let's go to plugins now.
to the plugins.
Yeah.
Here again,
Yep.
and see the
Installed.
installed plugins.
Yep.
Okay,
And do you know off the top of your head what theme you're using?
no, I don't.
Okay, so let's scroll down. So we've got, okay,
So you can see it's asking for new versions, new classic editor, and so on.
right.
Contact forms, duplicator.
Let's see what version of WordPress it is. If you have a look at the updates page from the under dashboard.
Yeah, right at the top left.
Okay, so updates.
Yeah.
And then that'll tell us.
This says can update to, but I don't see any indication of what it would be.
Hang on, hang on. Well, the other place, Drew, was in the bottom of the admin homepage. With a commonplace. So under home,
Home, okay.
Yep. We're just curious
I
just to see
understand,
how
I
far
understood.
back you are.
Sure, okay. So
Like whether it's a big deal or a little deal. So if you
Okay.
just scroll down, hang on, HP. Okay, scroll down a bit more. More.
5.4.13.
Right. Wow, that's a while ago.
So
That's
how
not-
long
actually,
ago
that's
is
not
that?
bad.
Chameleon theme. Okay, so chameleon theme and 5.1.4 is 2017, right? Because of the activity.
Well, no, because I
Not
mean,
necessarily. Okay,
if there happens to be a correlation between publishing and updating, yes, but there is no necessary connection.
okay,
Anyway, the 5.4 version just is an argument for doing the staging exercise so that if there is an issue or problem, it's easily identified right up front. If it should turn out that there is no issue and the updates all work, you can scratch going through the staging exercise and just make your changes to the main site because they all work smoothly in the staging version. In other words, use the staging version to check, but then you don't have to move the staged version with its updated. You don't need to replace the existing.
I don't have
site.
to go back, just update
Right.
on the regular.
Right. Now,
site.
if there were things that you wanted to work out after the update that you wanted to be part of, a set of changes to the site, then you could continue working in the staging site, make those changes, get them working, and then move the staging site to replace the existing site. Now, just in general terms, staging is offered by hosts in many cases, but dependent on the plan. The more you pay for the plan, the more likely you'll get a staging option from the host.
And well, there are free versions. Are they useful or not?
And there are free versions, but what the paid versions offer is more granularity in what you are moving from the staged version to the production version. So if you wanted everything to be changed, replaced, a free plugin can do that. If you wanted only everything but the media library and posts done, in other words, theme and pages and such, well, then you'd need a plugin, a staging plugin that could do that.
Okay.
Right.
Well,
And that's what I'm referring to as granularity. So there's about 10 or 12 different categories of things in a WordPress site. And the more capable the staging plugin, the more control you have over which things are promoted from staging to production.
I think what we would like to do along the timeline here is preserve the site as it is temporarily, because there is a fourth version being added, a fourth site, independent site for a new a piece of equipment that's coming in that's going to be adding to the capabilities of the entire company. So when that happens, our main site, the two peripheral sites, and the new peripheral site will all be folded into one gateway site that then spreads spreads out to four other sites. That'll be, so there'll have to be quite a bit of work being done there. But the main thing at this time is the site not to go down, right?
Right. So I think that, the testing site, the staging technique is the simplest way to sort of protect yourself in that regard. Mind you, another approach would be simply to make sure that you've got a good backup and you're confident the backup's good in the sense that it works.
Yes. And
then you can do the update on the current site, knowing that you can replace the current site with a backup copy if for some reason something goes wrong. That seems like a fairly brutal method, but that's fairly common.
Yes.
It's just to check to make sure you've got a good backup and then go ahead and update. Now, the PHP update is an important one.
Right.
There is a tool, a plugin called something like PHP compatibility checker.
Okay.
And what that does is it goes, you install that free plugin, turn it on, it does a report and tells you for the version you want to upgrade to, the following plugins have issues or don't, or there are no issues. But if there are issues, they'll list the plugins and then you have to go and either replace them with an updated version of the plugin for the PHP version in question, or replace them with a plugin that does comply or meet the minimum PHP standard.
Right.
PHP is just recently, there's an announcement, I don't know, a few days ago, that was 6.3, the supported versions of PHP are now up to 8. And that's something to be taken into account. But your site health thing will be as good an indicator as anywhere else about what version you could switch to. But the point being that first you check to make sure you don't have any plugins or problems using a checker of some sort. And then you make the change in PHP version at the host level. It's a server change, right? And then you tell WordPress the application, I guess actually, sorry, I was saying that inaccurately. You just have to change the server, I guess. And that's right, Drew, isn't it?
For PHP?
Yeah, to upgrade PHP, the changes at the server, the host server level, right?
That's right.
So there's nothing to do on the site itself.
No.
So how does that take place?
Well, there's a setting. If you just search at your host level PHP version, and it'll tell you where to go to select the version you want. The one trick that I released, one thing that I ran into years ago, and you know, when you make a mistake like this, you don't forget the solution. There's you pick your version from a drop-down list, at least in the case of cPanel. And then you have to go to the bottom of the page, which wasn't necessarily visible, and click apply.
Yes.
For the damn thing to be saved. It's not like save the change or nothing that you'd expect. It was just like this strange place to put a button saying apply.
Right.
And anyway, so the point just being is that when you do select the version you want, just get a good look at the page. There'll be somewhere that says accepted or implement this or do this now.
Yes.
And, you want to make sure you do that.
There's one
But that
more
should be a
thing.
relatively uncomplicated thing. And you probably won't have much in the way of issues with plugins. And if you do have a plugin that's a problem, then it's a question of just find a replacement.
Okay. I'm almost afraid to ask this next question.
Well,
And
just
the last question.
Stephen,
Go
before
ahead.
we go
Sure.
on to
Go
that,
ahead.
there's one more thing I would do
Yes.
before upgrading WordPress, and that is update your theme to the current version and make sure that your theme, if it's a paid theme, that your subscription is still active so that you're getting the current updates.
Right.
The reason is that updating WordPress can break old themes.
Okay.
So that's one of the most likely things to break when you
Thank
update WordPress.
Okay.
So you really want to go to the theme developer and confirm that the theme developer, that theme will run on the version you want to update to.
Well, isn't it better to switch to another theme or does
Well,
it
I mean,
matter?
if your current theme does support the current version of WordPress, then just following your strategy of let's just get this site up and running and clean and safe, and
Yeah.
then we'll worry about developing it when the new main site comes on board.
Okay.
So if that's your strategy, then this would make sense here. Sure, change the theme if you want, but don't change it just to avoid an upgrade issue. If in fact your current theme is supported.
Yeah, there are no advantages to switching to other themes, are there, other than aesthetic reasons?
It's a lot of work changing the theme because a lot of the stuff is going to have to be rebuilt.
Okay, so
with
that's
the new theme.
okay.
Yeah,
So
themes are relatively more sophisticated these days, and the controls and settings have been greatly improved. And so new themes benefit from that evolution, right?
Yeah.
Now, your new main site, do you know off the top of your head whether that's to be a block theme or a classic theme?
I don't know that because it's being developed by an outside
Right.
company.
So if
but
it
I
is
could
using-
find out. Yeah, I could find out.
Yeah, if it's going to be using a block theme, then you'd want to migrate a site like the one in question here also to a block theme,
Okay.
because if no other reason, then you don't want to be learning two different kinds of themes when one kind of theme is the future and the other kind of theme is the past.
Right.
Now, the classic themes may be past, but they're going to be around here for a long time, at least the next 10 years. So they're not going anywhere in the short run.
But it's better to move to the block theme, correct?
Right. Now, the reason why block themes, one of the things to take into account with block themes is that if you have a complex site, for example, that does a lot of e-commerce and has specialized requirements, then you'd want to be very careful about going to a block theme to make sure that it has all the capabilities you need. Classic themes have had many years to develop techniques and ways of doing things for very specific sorts of requirements, right? A competitive theme can't possibly duplicate that in its early years, right? So if you have a site which is text-oriented, heavy text, it's documentation, it's marketing materials, it's stuff like that. Well, that really lends itself to a block theme with all the benefits of the new block approach to things.
Right.
So on the one hand, the classic themes have all these techniques which are well established and helpful. But on the other hand, the new block themes have new ways of doing things which work much better than the old ways did because they're new and they've had a chance to learn from past experience.
Okay.
So now, sorry, was it Stephen or Mike? I can't remember who was the one wanting to get the diagnostics on a site, because I just recalled that doesn't somebody have a plugin that tells you which pages and posts are using which blocks?
Yeah,
That's
Robin, could I just ask a question on the update question though?
Sure.
I'm with GoDaddy, and a summer or so ago, we tried to use our staging site and wasted days on it and found out it just wasn't going to work. And the reason was that our domain is not in the same IP range or anywhere close to the staging site. So the moment we got into anything with security, the staging site would crash. So we couldn't actually access a large amount of our site on the staging site because the security was wrong. And we wasted a whole lot of time. So we basically went to a backup, which is scheduled at GoDaddy. And so there's a certain time of day when you've got a backup that's only a couple of minutes old, where you can go in and make a change and run it. And if it works, you're happy. And if it doesn't work, you roll back to the backup that's only a few minutes old. And that saved an enormous amount of trial and error. But the staging site just wouldn't work for security issues.
Interesting, because that's one of the key components of a staging site, is the ability to make changes to the database that recognize the difference between the staging site and its domain and whatever, and potentially, PHP version and other things against the production site. And that the more control you have over that migration or process, the better. And just by way of background, all the things that go by the label staging, backup, migration, export, those all essentially use the same underlying techniques, right? But a migration is different from an export, is really just in your point of view about what you think you're doing. The things you're actually doing to the site internally are essentially, if not identical, then super familiar. So in other words, the reason I mention that is that sometimes in a plugin that's talking about migration, we'll have exactly what you want for a staging issue, or a staging plugin called staging something or other, actually has a technique which is very specific to migration issues that you could have, going from the staging site to the new site and making sure the URLs all work. Because that's obviously very important. I mean, the staging process doesn't work if the new database doesn't have the correct URLs for all its content, right? It's obviously not going to work.
but that was where the conflict was. We've got www, my domain.
But you know what? I had the top level Go Geek plan at SiteGround years ago. This is way back when. And one of the things which I thought was really important was it has staging capability, one click, just click and bingo, you have a staging site. And then you do whatever you want to do with a staging site, and another click, and it's now the production site, right? So I go on my site and click, and it doesn't produce a staging site. Go to support, and they say, oh, well, it must be the site. In other words, how to lose a customer in 30 seconds or less. Blame his inability to do what your site offers on the customer's, effort to do so, rather than, hey, let me check this out. Of course, the SiteGround executives were just aghast when they learned how incompetent their support staff were in just brushing off a customer's inquiry. But in any event. Do we have any other questions here, or are we about ready to wrap up?
I just wanted to ask one final question, and that was with regards to the other option we could do here is we could, of course, put this out to a company to do it, to do the site build. And I'm just wondering, from what little I've learned researching this, is that since Google has made changes to how they mine the information, it seems to me that they cite something like a more human approach to the use of language. So my question, and I don't want it to be a lengthy answer, just maybe something short. Is there anything that professional SEOs can do that would somehow be better and drive traffic to your site? Google claims they don't favor ads, and that all they want is some sort of literate information that's at the flesh test level of a grade 9 student or even a grade 8 student. Am I simplifying that too much, or is that basically what's going on? Do you understand me?
Yeah, I think the best way to describe it is write what your customers are looking for.
Yes, of course.
I think what he's mentioning, there's two big trends occurring now with Google. One of them is a transition over the past 6 to 9 months and going on for another 6 to 9 months to a focus on the searcher's intent as opposed to the searcher's keywords and such.
Right.
Up to now, keywords have pretty much driven the whole process.
Right.
Google's now trying to go another level of abstraction up the ladder and say it is not the keywords themselves, it's what the keywords indicate about the user's intent and what is the user trying to accomplish, what's the user trying to learn. And so that's changed some of the emphasis, but not in a radical way, since content quality and content sufficiency, in other words, content that your users want, is more valuable than content which is SEO optimized, but of less interest, right? So in other words, SEO can't compensate for content which doesn't do the job.
Right.
But assuming that content from two places equally does the job, then there are things that SEO people can do, anybody can do for that matter, that will improve your chances of being discovered vis-a-vis the competition. Right. For example, there's a whole category that goes by a variety of names, but it's the way the on-page content is provided. And in that sense, you can think of it as micro content, things like page titles and headings, that you have keywords in headings and in the page title, for example, that the slug or the file name for a page or post has keywords in it. So these are things that can be done automatically or manually, which improve your chances, but they will not overcome quality issues. If your content's out of date or irrelevant to the users, then no matter how much you SEO tweak it, it ain't gonna perform because it doesn't do the job. So what Google's trying to figure out is who's getting this job done. That's the site that we want to direct people to, because that's what will make them happy and therefore make us happy as the search engine provider. The second big change is the whole analytics side of Google has just completed a radical transformation from one platform to a new platform, which became final on July the 1st, after which the old data from the old platform was lost. So that was kind of like the drop dead date. Anyway, the new way things work is quite fascinating, really, but it's essentially, in a nutshell, it's event driven. It's triggered by things happen on a site, triggered by what users do and click on and go to and do next kind of thing, in more ways than they've ever done before. And so that's what the analytics check, and that's also what Google considers important to evaluate. And so that feeds the SEO process, right? By telling you what keywords are people searching for on your site, for example, or what sequence of pages they go to, what can you learn from that about the content that you've got and how to present it. So those sorts of insights from the data, the analytics data, feed the SEO process and tell you what you should be doing to tweak things to make things more findable by the people who landed your site and are trying to find the content you're offering. Is that short enough?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Drew, go ahead.
I have just reread an excellent book on writing for websites, and it's called They Ask, You Answer by Marcus Sheridan. It's an excellent read. And he is all over YouTube. You can find tons of his material on YouTube. He's a great speaker, definitely worth looking into.
Thank you.
Does anybody know what this question is that somebody by the name of, I'm going to mispronounce it, Shubham, Shubham. Anyway, the chat session sort of adds, they really appreciate the help and somebody could answer the question. So anybody know what that question is?
Unfortunately, I don't. And he said that he had to leave.
Right. Well, something about speed.
Robin, it
Yes.
was so essentially he posted his link just above, and I'll repost it for you. And he wanted to know how the site loads, whether it loads well or if it's slow, or what he can improve on speed aspect.
Right.
Let me just find the link and I'll post it for you.
Okay. So he must have been concerned that the site was taking
It was taking a while to load. Yeah.
too much time to load.
Is this the one, Nathangroup.ca?
Yes, that's the one. Thank you.
Can you put that in the
Okay,
enter it?
I'll put it in the.
There it is.
How do you get it so that it displays as a clickable link rather than just text?
Well, you can only enter it and then should convert it.
Yeah, in my case,
Should convert it so that like I'm just entering it now.
Yeah. When Olsi entered it, it converted. Maybe he just put it in the.
You know what? Maybe it's because we're not giving it a URL, we're just giving it a domain name.
Yeah.
So let me try with the domain name. Come on. Right. So if you put in a URL, you get a clickable URL. If you put in the domain name, you get a dead link.
Oh, man.
So this is his site. Well, you can see why it would be. It could be slow. I mean, there's a lot of stuff to download to display the page. But I see that somebody gave him GT metrics, right? Which is one of the main places that you go to get an analysis of a page. A page's loading statistics, but also I always get Lighthouse and Lightspeed confused. Through which is it? Is Google's Lighthouse or Lightspeed? Lighthouse.
Yeah, I'm using Page Speed Insights.
Okay. And what are you getting? You
Well,
want here?
it's still processing.
Let's see what GT metric has to say.
Hmm.
Yes, GT metrics is saying that we're really busy right now, and so you'll have to wait.
Yeah, so I'm getting so Google has just come back. It's not great. It's performance is 55 on desktop and 26 on mobile. So yeah, the performance is kind of isn't great. Let's see what this the site is using. That video header probably isn't helping.
Well, here's my GT metrics.
Using a theme for real estate agents called houses. So it could be a slow theme.
Wow, look at some of these URLs. Actually, Drew, the other day I had a URL, I think it was from Microsoft, that had 2,500 characters in it. Now that sounds bad, but how would you think of a page built out of Elementor that had, was it 2,200 divs in it?
Yeah.
2,200 of them. So that was flagged as a performance issue. I mean, that's pretty obvious, right? But Elementor is famous or infamous for its heavy use of divs. And that's this question here. Avoid an excessive DOM size. That DOM for document object model. So this has, well, this isn't much better than the Elementor one. This one has 2,800 DOM elements. That's a lot. In other words, this page has been built out of a lot of complicated pieces, right? Every one of them treated as a standalone unit. And so therefore it's going to be, a biggie. 142 page requests. All right.
He's
Okay.
also
So
got something that pulls in real estate listings, which is pretty much required on a real estate agent site, but that could also be slowing it down. Let's see where it's hosted. Yeah, he could also be running cheap hosting.
and you were on that one called Page Speed Test.
The Google Page Speed Insights. Huh.
Okay, well, that's what
I've never heard of his web hosting company. Oh, hosting provider is called Chupa, but his name server is at Name Hero, which is a known company.
okay, well, we've got stuff here that certainly would be worth him having a look at. Mike, you were referring to this as a splash page?
Yeah. Yeah,
What were you meaning by that?
just, you throw out a page that loads really, really quickly. So that somebody hits your domain, it's bang, that page is there in a half a second. And then you put a timer on it, and while they're looking at that really quick image, then you start putting in the stuff behind it. So if the customer never realizes that you're doing all this work, they just know that they saw your name and phone number and everything in half a second.
Right, but that could be also accomplished by delaying the loading of things which aren't necessary for the initial display, right?
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. That's what's wrong with his initial display's got this animation.
Right. But you're saying make it into like 2 pages, right? Like a splash part and another.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm just saying that if you were to control the loading of images and scripts and so on, so as to improve the numbers on the first paint and so on, then that would be the same result. That's the same end result, but with a different technique. Now, we don't know to what extent these images have been optimized and so on, nor do we know, for example, because it's dependent on the host, is how fast they're able to generate the results for this query here to list these properties. I mean, is it as fast as a blog post search, query would be? I don't know, but I'd want to know that.
I suspect not, because it's coming from a real estate database, which is third.
Right, and I guess the other thing is that having a video with this much weight on the page, having a video in the header, which doesn't actually contribute anything other than just a bit of visual candy, right? It's not actually, there's no message in these clouds zipping across the screen. So that's really wasted, right? If it were, coming up with something that really made sense to a user that they couldn't otherwise understand, then great, do it. But if it's just to have a pleasing effect, to decorate, then this is the wrong place to be spending that sort of stuff.
Yeah, as a quick win, I would try replacing that video with a static image and see if it makes a difference.
Yeah, or if it has to be a video, then make it relevant, make it useful. I mean, make it contribute something to the marketing capability. This is obviously a marketing site, right? Now, I would also question whether this video here, without any introduction, it's not saying anything about why do I want to watch this video? It's taking up, it's the second most important thing on this page because it's number 2, right? And it doesn't do anything at all. So that's like a bust. Now, I don't know about you guys, but this is Canada's top 1% real estate team. And it looks like Illinois, Riverdale, Illinois, in Chicago. Chicago. Those are mainly Chicago listings, so that makes a lot of sense.
I think it's all dummy data.
Okay.
I was excited by some of the listings until I realized that.
Yeah, that's true. He's just using a probably a template, so to speak.
Yeah, okay. Well, I wonder if this map is dynamic as well. I guess it is because it has these plus and minus buttons, which should, zoom in and out. But I guess, once again, the question is there really an important value in having something dynamic and which is costly from a performance point of view, if it doesn't do something useful from the point of view of
noticed that
marketing?
there's something really odd about that map. If you scroll up to the map, and the heading above our location, it says Kingston, Ontario, but on the actual Google map, it says Toronto, Ontario.
Yes. Well, that could be because this is just mocked up quickly and not been proofed or checked or whatever. But I mean, it's, it's got some nice characteristics. This header is like a bust for its video, but also for just, I mean, I think that they're selling residential real estate, aren't they?
It appears so.
Because this gigantic cover block is like completely irrelevant.
Did it say at the, if you look at the headings at the top, did it say both residential and residential and commercial?
Yeah. Well, without the fellow here to answer these questions, I mean, we're just playing around, but it's fun anyway to sort of look at this sort of thing. But the page tests, the performance tests that we ran, the GT metrics one uses the Google Lighthouse analytics underneath the surface. I don't know about the page speed one, whose analytics it uses, but that's worth looking into as well. So
yeah, that's Google as well.
Is it? So I guess everybody uses Google under the hood, and that's all there is to it. Okay, guys, anybody have any final comments or whatever? Otherwise, I think we're done for another month. Thank you, Drew, for your help, and guys, for your contributions.
This was interesting, and I learned quite a bit.
Well, it reminds me of those very early days in my own life when technology was sort of being introduced at a very early stage. I used to read this magazine called Byte, B-Y-T-E, big, thick, glossy magazine.
Yeah, me too.
And I read it like I used to read the, I would call it, I can't remember the scientific magazine. What's it called? American.
Scientific American.
Scientific American. Anyway, the point that I'm making is that when I started out looking at Byte, I could probably understand a third of the ads, like what product are they selling? I understand that. And maybe a quarter of the articles, I could get into the first 2 or 3 pages. But after a certain application of energy and curiosity over a period of time, I actually learned a fair bit just by kind of reading my way into it and kind of thinking about things. And, the ads are very helpful when you're starting out and don't sort of know anything. And so coming to a meetup like this and just listening to the way people go about figuring things out. By what process do you sort of diagnose a problem? By what series of steps do you figure out how to do a layout? To actually sort of see that happen in front of you is far more beneficial than reading about it. And the other side of the coin is that the thing that most of us have an insufficient amount of is confidence that our do-it-ourselves efforts are working out. And therefore we tend to get gun shy and don't want to try something because we're concerned it'll fail and we don't know what to do when then happens. Or we try something and doesn't work, we don't know what to try next. But in these sorts of sessions, you can see that we run into those problems and then you just sort of back up a couple steps and try a different angle. I mean, we are the personification of trial and error, also known by this much more technically pleasing term, iterations. We iterate in an agile fashion.
You know what? When I went to college for computers, we called that the principle of stepwise refinement, but it got a fancier name as it went along.
Well, if you study how people actually work and make decisions, there's nothing more obvious than the fact that trial and error rules the day. And doesn't matter what people say, what they're actually doing is a form of trial and error in some form or another. Nobody can have a solution unless it's an identical problem to the one they previously solved. Otherwise, they'll try out something,
right,
and they'll then adjust as they go, right?
That's right. That's
how we live life. Okay, guys, that's it for tonight and for this month of July, and we'll hopefully see lots of you next month in August. And until then, be safe.
Oh, just before we go, how will we know? Is it will it come up in the main page in our site if we have that widget installed? That's how I heard about this one.
Well, if you joined our meetup group, right? Have you joined our meetup group?
I think so.
Yeah, well, just check because there's a join button, and if you don't see it, then you've joined, and offer to unjoin you or whatever. But the point being that when you RSVP to a meetup like this one, you will get the email I send out announcing. It's a comment, actually. I put a comment on the event page, and that gets sent out by email to everybody as a comment. And I just say, the YouTube video is available, blah, blah, blah. And then I put in the announcement of the August meetup, which will go out sometime this week. And I put in there the link to the YouTube video. And this month, I hopefully will also do that for the grain version. And you might try that first and see if you like it. Because as I say, I think it does a better job with the transcript. And it also produces a summary. Or at least, the highlights that you can sort of jump to. And it synchronizes the transcript to the video recording. So if you find something in the transcript you like, you can click on that and get to that spot in the transcript, which is kind of a cool feature.
Okay. All right.
End of sales pitch. Good night to all.
Thank you. Bye.
Good night.
Bye-bye.